Story 11. Same journal, different handwriting. I always log my hikes, date, weather, elevation, small things I notice. It's a habit I picked up from my dad, who used to say, "Memory lies. Ink doesn't." I didn't expect anything different when I set out solo into Sequoia. The plan was 3 nights, maybe 4, off-grid, no signal, no noise. Just me, the redwoods, and my journal. But something was already wrong on day 1. When I opened my notebook to jot down my first entry, there were words on the page I hadn't written. I froze. The handwriting was similar to mine, but tighter, like someone gripping the pen too hard. The first entry was dated today, July 15th, but it described things I hadn't done yet. Camped near the forked cedar, it said. River was too high to cross by dusk. Slept on the ridge. None of that had happened. I was still near the base, hours from the river. At the bottom of the page, in a different spidery hand, was one sentence: "Keep going. It's almost over." I stared at that line for a long time. Rationally, I thought I must have forgotten I'd scribbled something earlier. Maybe prepping the itinerary. But I never log fake entries. Never. Still, I decided to play along. I hiked toward the forked cedar mentioned in the notes. To my unease, I found it exactly as described. Crooked trunk, split halfway up like antlers. That night, clouds rolled in heavy, and sure enough, the river ahead was too swollen to pass. I camped on the ridge, just like the journal said. I didn't sleep much. The wind kept making the branches whisper against my tent, a soft brushing sound like someone thumbing through pages. At some point, I got up and checked the journal again. Another entry had appeared. Same handwriting. New details. Heard something. Moving near camp. Couldn't see it. Left before sunrise. The final line, again in that eerie, angular script. Keep going. It's almost over. That's when the panic set in. I knew. That wasn't there before. I hadn't written it. No one else had access to my pack. I didn't hear anyone approach during the night. But the entry was fresh, the ink still, slightly smudged. I considered turning back, but something about that phrase, "it's almost over," pulled at me. I told myself maybe there was some rational explanation. Maybe I'd gone too long without talking to anyone. By day 3, I stopped, trying to rationalize. The entries were always one step ahead, predicting not just where I'd camp, but what I'd feel. Stomach hurts, regretting the dried beans, hoped for silence. Instead, heard low breathing outside the tent. I had eaten beans. I had heard something, like a slow exhale, just once around 2 a.m. I told myself it was wind catching the canvas seam, but I didn't believe it. Not really. I tried skipping ahead in the journal, flipping through the next pages, blank, until sunset, then more ink. Found the old trail sign snapped in half, almost missed the turn. Something moved behind him. That entry wasn't mine, either. I hadn't reached that part yet, but when I did, I found the sign just like it said. Splintered wood, letters faded, and something did move behind me. A quick shuffle. I turned, heart pounding. Nothing there. The journal had one more note that night. Do not look behind you after the bridge, no matter what you hear. My hands were shaking as I read it. I tried to write my own entry, something, anything, to feel normal. But when I opened to a fresh page, the pen wouldn't leave a mark. It was like the paper rejected me, like it only wanted the other hand. I crossed the bridge just after midnight. Old, wooden, creaky. Halfway across, I heard footsteps behind me, measured, deliberate. I stopped. So did they. My breath fogged in the cold air. I remembered the warning. Do not look behind you. Every instinct screamed at me to turn. I didn't. I walked faster, trembling, refusing to look back. When I finally made it to the last marked campsite, I found the journal already open on my sleeping pad. One final page written. Not in my hand. You made it, it said. For now. Then in the smaller script, keep going. It's almost over. I hiked out before dawn, barely stopping. I haven't opened the journal since. I don't know if it's still writing without me. I don't want to know. If anyone's ever found something like this, something that knows what you haven't done yet, please tell me. Please. I need to know it's not just me. Story 12. Stone markers that followed me. I don't even like hiking. Let me start with that. I'm not one of those rewilding types or people who spend weekends mapping trails. I was just trying something new. After a rough patch, with work and a quiet breakup, a friend lent me some gear and pointed me toward a quieter loop near Yosemite. Minimal traffic, he said. You'll find your headspace. The markers started on the second afternoon. I'd stopped by a stream to refill my bottles and eat a few almonds when I saw them. 4 flat stones, one cracked clean through, stacked perfectly beside the trail. Not just balanced, but intentional, like someone had placed them with slow, quiet precision. I didn't think much of it. Probably some ranger's subtle trail marker or some hiker's art. That night it rained lightly. I pitched my tent a little off-path under a sparse cover of pine. Around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. The rain had stopped, and the forest was still, like breath held. As I stepped out, the beam from my headlamp cut across the ground, and there it was again. Same stack of stones, same cracked top piece. This time just outside my tent's vestibule, less than 2 feet from where I slept. I crouched down and stared at it. No tracks in the soil, no broken twigs, just the stones. I nudged the stack lightly. It toppled easily. I told myself it must have been there when I pitched camp and I just didn't notice. Still, I didn't sleep much that night. The forest was too quiet, like it had noticed me noticing. Next morning, I packed fast and moved out. I doubled back slightly, choosing a different spur from the loop, hoping it might bring me closer to an access road. I didn't want to admit I was spooked, but I was. That afternoon, I found a makeshift latrine spot off a ridge. I dug a small pit, did my business, and when I came back, less than 5 minutes later, the stones were there again. Same formation, same number, same damn cracked piece on top. I felt it in my chest then, a slow, tight pull, like something had shifted from curious to personal. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was some weird geological coincidence. Maybe I was looping accidentally, walking in circles. But when I pulled out my map, everything lined up. I was moving forward. So how were the stones always ahead of me? I stopped speaking aloud after that, not even to curse or narrate. Every sound felt amplified. The click of my poles, the rasp of my boots. At dusk, I found a bare patch of dirt and unrolled my sleeping bag under a low overhang. I didn't pitch the tent. I wanted a quick escape if needed. When I opened my eyes the next morning, they were around me. The stone stacks, 6 of them, equidistant, surrounding my sleeping bag like a crude compass. Each one identical, 4 smooth stones, one cracked, placed last. My hands were shaking before I even stood up. The dew on the stones hadn't dried. That meant they were placed sometime before dawn. Someone or something had been close, watching, placing. I didn't eat that day. I just walked. Fast. Wrong direction, probably. I didn't care. At one point, I passed an old fire ring and considered lighting a signal. But who would see it out here? Who would care? The last time I saw the markers was when I tried to leave the trail entirely. Just crash straight through the brush. Compass. Be damned. I pushed hard for 2 hours, scratched and stumbling, and then I tripped. There it was. A stone stack. Fresh. Ground undisturbed around it. Centered directly in my path, like it had been waiting. I sat down, not because I was tired, but because I didn't know where to be anymore. If I moved, they'd follow. If I stayed, they'd watch. I was being mapped, marked, measured. That night I didn't unroll my bag. I leaned against a tree and waited for morning. At some point I must have fallen asleep sitting up. I don't remember the sunrise. I just remember the hum of a distant engine and stumbling toward it, nearly getting hit by a trail maintenance truck. I didn't explain much, just said I got turned around, dehydrated. They gave me water, radioed in a report. One of them offered to go back and help retrieve my gear. I told them to leave it, let the forest have it. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm home now, back in the city. I haven't unpacked. I haven't told my friends. But yesterday, someone left something on my apartment doorstep. 4 flat stones, 1 cracked. If anyone's ever experienced something like this, please tell me. Please tell me I'm not the only one. Story 13. Rustling at ground level. I've always camped alone, not out of some survivalist pride, but because silence feels cleaner when no one's around to fill it. Last October, I took a week off and drove up to a remote spot in Maine, about 20 miles from any marked trail. I knew the area well enough from previous trips, but that night, my third, I set up camp near a mossy ledge I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't remarkable, just a low rise surrounded by dry underbrush and pine needles, but I remember the way the trees leaned inward around it, like they were listening. I'd finished dinner by 7:30, just instant noodles and a protein bar, and was already zipped up inside the tent by 9. The wind barely moved. No animal calls, the kind of quiet you only get that far from people. I was drifting when I heard it. A soft rustling, not above, not in the canopy where you expect squirrels or owls, but down near the roots. It wasn't continuous. Just 1, 2, 3 slow scrapes through the leaves, then silence again. I propped myself up and listened, holding my breath. At first I thought it might be a raccoon or a fox, but there was no chittering, no shuffle of paws. Whatever it was moved deliberately. It didn't scamper, it glided. I unzipped the tent slowly and leaned out, flashlight already in hand. When I flicked it on, the beam caught something low to the ground. Not quite crawling, more like sliding. Dark, rounded. It darted out of the light and disappeared behind a thicket of brush maybe 20 feet away. My first instinct wasn't fear, it was confusion. I crouched outside the tent, straining my ears. The sound it made, brushing past the dry pine needles and leaves, was too smooth for fur, and it didn't crunch the underbrush like a deer would. It was closer to a dragging fabric sound, almost wet. I stayed crouched there for a long time, flashlight on, scanning the woods. Every now and then I'd catch a faint rustle, always low to the ground, always circling. Not approaching, not fleeing, just circling. I considered shouting, but the woods felt compressed, like my voice would get swallowed before it reached anything. Eventually, I forced myself back into the tent, zipped it shut, and held the flashlight on my chest like a safety vest. I didn't sleep. Not really. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again, closer. The distinct sound of dry leaves shifting. I dared to peek out. Just a sliver of the zipper open. The beam caught nothing, but I smelled something, like turned soil. Damp, old earth. The kind you dig into and find worms squirming at the edges. The next morning, I checked the ground around my camp. No prints, no signs of an animal digging or moving through, but something had brushed the outer wall of my tent. A smudge about 2 feet from the ground. Oval, slightly streaked, like it had slime or oil in it. I touched it. The fabric was still tacky. I told myself it had to be a raccoon, maybe one with mange or some injury that made it move weirdly. But all day the woods felt wrong. Birds flew low, quiet. Even the chipmunks stayed hidden. I heard the rustling again around noon while gathering kindling, but it stopped the second I turned. That night, I didn't light a fire. I sat inside the tent with my back to the far wall, flashlight off, listening. The rustling came back, slower this time, as if it knew I was alert. It scraped across the leaves, paused, scraped again. Once, I swear it touched the side of the tent. Not violently, just a pressure, like someone pressing a palm flat against the fabric from outside. I didn't unzip the tent again. I couldn't. I held the flashlight but didn't turn it on. What terrified me more than the sound was that when I focused, I realized I couldn't hear anything else. No wind, no branches, just the slow, deliberate movement at ground level. The brushing, the pause, the brushing again. Sometime after 4 a.m., it stopped, not with a retreat but with finality, like it had decided something. At dawn, I broke camp in record time. I didn't eat, didn't clean up. I left everything I didn't need and hiked 7 miles straight to the car. I haven't been back since. And here's the part I can't explain, the part that makes my throat tighten even now. Last week, I found that same smudge on the outside of my apartment window, 2 feet off the ground. Oval, slightly streaked, no footprints. I live on the 3rd floor. If anyone else has seen or heard something like this, especially while camping, please tell me. I need to know I'm not imagining it. Story 14. Cell tower with no company. It started with a wrong turn off Highway 97. I was on my way from Bend to Eugene, trying to avoid the summer traffic, and Google Maps showed a shortcut through a Forest Service road. At first, it was fine, dusty, narrow, but manageable. Then the signal dropped. No service. The map froze with my blue dot in the middle of a green void. I kept driving, confident I'd reconnect soon. I didn't. By the time I realized I was truly lost, the sun had dipped behind the tree line. The forest out there is different, dense, in a way that muffles everything. No birds, no wind, just the low hum of my engine and the crunch of tires over gravel. I stopped at a clearing to check my bearings. That's when I noticed a single bar flicker to life on my phone. Then it vanished. I scrambled out of the car, lifting my phone high, walking in slow circles like some idiot ghost hunter. And then it came back. 1 bar. 2. It was coming from a direction deeper into the woods, to the right of the road. I followed it, pushing, through brush and pine needles. It wasn't long before I saw the tower, rusted, maybe 40 feet tall, half hidden behind a wall of evergreens. It didn't look operational. There were no lights, no fencing, and most oddly, no signage. Usually, these things have a placard, property of AT&T or whatever. But this tower had none, just metal scaffolding and a relay box at the base. My phone was now at 3 bars. I couldn't load anything, but the signal was real. I could feel it buzzing faintly in my hand. Then I saw the cables, thick black wires leading from the base into the ground, cleanly severed, not torn, not chewed, cut, as if by bolt cutters. The copper inside still gleamed under the last light of dusk. I knelt down to look closer and noticed something else. The steel surface of the base was damp, no rain recently, and it smelled faintly like rubbing alcohol. Someone had wiped it clean. I backed away, suddenly aware of how quiet it was. My own breathing sounded wrong, too loud, out of sync with everything else. That's when I saw it. My name, carved into the metal about knee height. Not deeply but clearly. Ryan. The lines were uneven, shaky, like someone had used a pocket knife in a rush. I don't carve my name into things. I hadn't been here before. I stood frozen. Then something buzzed in my pocket. My phone. It was vibrating, but there was no notification. No call, no text. Just a vibration. Long and steady. I glanced. At the screen. It had gone black, then white, then black again. No logo, no battery symbol. I held the power button, but it was unresponsive. It felt warm, too warm. The air shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. Not colder or hotter, just different. Like walking into a room where someone had been moments ago. A sort of human residue lingering in the atmosphere. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. They looked the same, but something was off with the shadows. They didn't match the fading light. One was too long. Another curved slightly. I walked backward, keeping my eyes on the tower, then turned and made my way toward where I thought I had come from. I didn't run. I didn't want to. It felt like running would trigger something, like a tripwire. Instead, I moved quietly, listening. I couldn't hear my own footsteps. That's what scared me most. When I reached my car, I got in and locked the doors without thinking. I sat there in the dark, clutching my now dead phone, staring out through the windshield. Nothing moved, no lights, no sound. I waited, 10 minutes, maybe more, until I finally dared to start the engine. The road back wasn't easy. I had no signal the rest of the way, and I must have taken at least 5 wrong turns. before I hit pavement again. By the time I reached a gas station with a working signal, it was past midnight. I didn't mention the tower to the clerk. I just filled my tank, bought a bottle of water, and kept driving. I tried searching for the tower later. Cell relay. Maps, property databases, Reddit threads. Nothing. No unregistered towers in that area. No reports of strange signals. It was like it didn't exist. Or wasn't supposed to. But I still have the phone. It won't turn on, but it holds heat sometimes. Briefly, like a heartbeat. And once, 2 nights ago, it buzzed again. No light. No screen, just a long, steady vibration. Like something remembered me. If anyone in Oregon has seen a tower like that, or found their own name etched where it shouldn't be, I need to know. Please, tell me I'm not the only one. Story 15. Lantern light between trees. He said he was just going to check out the sound. Something distant, a rustle or a thud. Too heavy for wind, too random for an animal. Be right back, he mumbled, already stepping away from the firelight. That was around 11:40 p.m. I haven't heard his voice since. We'd been hiking the Devil's Path Trail for 3 days. Not the safest route, especially that deep in the Catskills. But we were overconfident and bored. It was early fall, crisp. At night, but not yet unbearable. That night, we pitched our tent off trail, about a half mile from a dried-out creek bed. We hadn't seen another hiker in over 12 hours. The silence had a texture to it, dense and full of old trees breathing around us. When he didn't return after 10 minutes, I assumed he was messing with me. Classic move, wander off, stay quiet, let your friend start panicking. But 20 minutes passed, then 30. I called his name, tried the walkie, static. I turned, up the lantern, and pushed into the trees. Every sound made me flinch. There was a smell too, faint but persistent, like wet bark mixed with rust. I scanned every trunk, every shadow between the narrow pines, expecting him to jump out, laughing. He didn't. I kept going. A straight path at first, then veering left, then left again. I marked a few trees with a knife, small gashes just in case. But soon the forest began to loop in on itself, or I did. I'd walked for 5 minutes only to stumble past the same hollow stump I'd already marked. The wind had picked up. I could hear it whistle through high branches, but it never touched the ground. The air near my skin felt still. Wrong. By 1:40 a.m., I was exhausted. My hands were trembling from the cold and nerves. I'd shouted his name dozens of times. I had no real light besides the handheld lantern. Its battery was draining. Everything felt fragile, like if I let myself panic for more than 5 seconds, I'd shatter. Then I saw it. A glow. About 30 yards ahead, weaving between the trees. Soft and golden, not like my LED lantern. It bobbed as if carried, the way real firelight moves. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I stepped forward and whispered his name. The light paused. I moved faster, through thorns, over roots, ducking branches. My boots hit uneven patches of earth, but I didn't slow. The light pulled me. It wasn't just a glow now. I could see a shape holding it. A silhouette. Broad shoulders, a jacket I recognized. His jacket. My friend turned toward me. "Derek?" I called. He didn't answer, but I saw his face, just a glimpse, side-lit and expressionless. His eyes didn't meet mine. Then the light went out. Total darkness. I stopped. My lungs burned. I spun around, trying to find any hint of the glow again. Nothing. Only the sound of my own heartbeat pounding inside my skull. I was about to yell, when I noticed something else. The trees were different. Younger, denser, and the air smelled like wood smoke again, like our campfire. I turned, and the tent was right there, behind me. I don't remember walking back. I don't remember turning around. But there I was, back in our clearing, alone. His pack was gone, his boots too. Only my gear remained, undisturbed. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the tent, light off, listening. Once I thought I heard footsteps around 4:20 a.m., but they never came close. I left as soon as it was light, hiking 5 miles to the ranger station. They searched, didn't find anything. No prints, no jacket, no signs of a second campfire, nothing. Sometimes, late at night, I'll see a flicker outside my window, like a lantern swaying just beyond the tree line. I don't live near the woods anymore. If anyone's ever seen something like that, if someone you knew just disappeared and then sort of came back but didn't, I need to know. Please. Has this happened to you? Story 16. Voice in the emergency beacon. They told us to trust the equipment, rely on your instincts second, technology first. That's what I remembered most from the training. So when my personal locator beacon started blinking red at 2:13 a.m. without me touching it, I sat there for a solid minute, just staring. It was clipped to my vest, lying on the table beside the wood stove in the ranger station. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't touched it. I live alone up here, in a cabin surrounded by 30 miles of forest. The nights are colder now, but that's not why I shivered. That cabin doesn't echo. It's too cramped, too full of creaking logs and old supplies. But I swear the sound it made, when the beacon buzzed, reverberated in my spine like it had been screamed. My first thought was that the button jammed. It's happened before during storms, but the weather was still, just a low wind pressing against the trees. I picked up the device. It blinked again. Active signal. I turned it off. My radio hadn't picked up any emergency ping from the dispatch center, which it should have. Still, I scanned the frequencies, just in case. Nothing. Just static. I decided I'd bring it down to base in the morning. I've had enough false alarms to know better than to call it in at that hour. I tried to sleep. I really did. It was around 4 a.m. when I heard what I thought was a knock. Not on the door, on the side wall, facing the trees. It wasn't a branch. It had a rhythm. 3 slow taps, then nothing. I sat up in bed, held my breath, waited. My flashlight caught only dust in the air. I didn't move for almost 20 minutes. No more sounds. But I didn't go back to sleep either. When I reached the base later that day, I logged the malfunction. I almost didn't mention the knock. But I did casually to Ron, the other ranger on rotation. He didn't laugh, just nodded and said, "These cabins breathe weird sometimes." Still, he offered to run diagnostics on the beacon. I handed it over, happy to be rid of the thing. It was nearly dark when Ron called me back into the monitoring room. He had a blank expression on his face, but his fingers were trembling just slightly on the desk. "There's a recording," he said. I blinked. "What?" He turned the screen toward me. The beacon had triggered an automatic voice buffer, 5 seconds long, usually used to log distress calls when a signal goes live. Most times it's garbled wind or someone yelling. This one was clear. My voice, saying 2 words, "Don't come." I didn't recognize the tone. It was flatter, no panic, just cold warning. It sounded like me, sure, but not how I speak. I sat down. Ron didn't say anything for a while. Eventually, he asked if I'd been sleepwalking or messing with the beacon. I told him no. He nodded again and saved the file. "Probably a glitch," he said, but he didn't believe it. I could tell. That night, back in my cabin, I left the beacon on the porch, just in case. At around 2 a.m., I woke up. No sound this time. Just the feeling, like pressure on my chest. I got up, checked outside. Everything seemed in place. Until I noticed the beacon. It was gone. Not fallen, not shifted. Gone. There were no tracks, no wind. Just the trees, utterly still. I stayed at base for the rest of the week. Ron didn't ask why, I didn't explain. We don't talk much anymore. I did check the logs again before I left, just to be sure. The alert frequency recorded a second message 2 nights later. Another 5 seconds. Same signal, same voice. Mine. This time it said, "It's already here. If anyone else has experienced something like this, please let me know. Am I going crazy?" Story 17. Static in the lickin'. I wasn't supposed to be out there that day. The other rangers had flagged the northern trail as closed for erosion, but I'd been doing solo patrols all season and hated leaving sections unchecked. Besides, I'd walked that loop 100 times. It was familiar, quiet, even comforting, in its loneliness. That changed when I brushed the moss off that marker and felt something pulse back through my fingertips. It was faint, like the prickle of static after pulling off a wool sweater, but deeper, rooted. I pulled my hand back, but the sensation lingered, like my skin remembered it. Then my radio, clipped to my belt, gave a sharp crackle. I hadn't touched the thing all day. No calls, no interference out here. Just the dry rustle of leaves and the distant drone of a hawk, but now it hissed like it was struggling to form words. I paused, half expecting a call from base, but there was no voice, just noise, until there wasn't. A brief pause in the static, and then something that sounded intentional. Not speech exactly, but a pattern, rhythmic, like coordinates spoken through broken teeth. I didn't catch all of it, but the numbers I did hear, I didn't recognize them. And I've logged every point in these woods. I know this place like muscle memory. I marked the trailhead on my notepad, even though I wasn't sure why. My fingers felt strange, a low tingling that wouldn't go away. I pressed forward, stepping carefully over roots, gravel crunching under my boots, eyes flicking back to the trees more than I'd like to admit. Nothing looked different, but it didn't feel the same. The silence had weight now, like it was waiting. About a mile in, I stopped. The usual landmarks, a bent oak, the rusted deer blind, weren't there. Instead, there was a clearing I'd never seen, even though this trail looped tight. I checked my GPS. No signal. I tapped the screen, then the radio. Still hissing, but softer now, almost like it was breathing with me. I stepped into the clearing. The ground was soft, spongy, with thick layers of moss and lichen. Everything was overgrown, but the space itself felt symmetrical, too clean, like something had cleared it, but not recently. The trees stood back just slightly, bowed inwards as if acknowledging something invisible at the center. And there, on a half-buried stone, more moss. Same kind I'd brushed off the marker. Without thinking, I reached to clear it again. The moment my skin touched it, the static surged, stronger this time. Up my arm, across my chest, into my teeth. I dropped to one knee. The radio screamed once, then went dead. I don't remember getting up, but I was standing somehow minutes later, or maybe longer. The sun had shifted. My compass spun uselessly in my hand, and there was something carved into the rock beneath the moss. Not letters, not numbers. Just grooves, repeated shapes like coils or antennae. They made my eyes ache. I backed away, slow. Every instinct in me said not to turn around, not to look too long at anything. The forest felt tighter now, closer. The air buzzed faintly like a frequency just out of reach. No bird song, no wind. Just the suggestion of presence, hiding in the lichen. I walked for hours, I think. My watch kept jumping, losing time, gaining it. By the time I reached the base trail again, it was almost dark. I didn't report the anomaly. I wrote down what I remembered, then crossed it out the next day. It felt like dreaming with my eyes open, but I kept the notepad, the numbers, the stone's shape. Sometimes I hear the static again, faintly, when I'm falling asleep. I've scanned the radio a dozen times since, hoping and dreading that I'll hear that voice again, that pattern. If anyone recognizes those numbers, or if you felt something like that out there, I need to know I'm not the only one. Please, say something. Story 18. No one in the canoe. I don't know what I expected to see that morning, maybe a loon skimming the lake's surface or the low drift of mist off the water. But not that canoe. Not drifting silently, maybe 50 yards from my camp, not completely empty, and certainly not moving like that. It was early, just after dawn, when the light on Knife Lake turns silver and every sound feels amplified. Paddle dips, tent zippers, even the slow crack of pine branches shifting in the breeze. I was sitting on a flat rock near shore, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos, letting the quiet soak in. That's when I saw it. The canoe, red hull, old-style wood trim, gliding slowly across the glassy water, maybe 40 feet from the opposite shore. There was no paddle in sight, no one inside, but it was moving. At first I thought it had come loose from someone's camp. Happens all the time. Guy ties it lazy, wakes up to find his ride halfway across the lake. I even chuckled, figured I'd keep an eye on it, maybe help out. But something felt off. The way it moved wasn't natural. No wobble, no drifting or spinning, just a straight, steady glide, like it had purpose. I stood, followed it along the rocky edge. The canoe angled slightly, veering closer to my side. That's when I noticed the footprints. I couldn't see them at first, not until the sun hit just right. But there they were, wet outlines on the wood floor, barefoot, judging by the shape. 2 prints, then 2 more, then nothing. They stopped halfway down the vessel. No signs of someone sitting, no gear, just silence, and those damp impressions fading as the wood dried. Curiosity overruled hesitation. I grabbed my paddle and eased my own canoe into the lake. The water was still, almost too still, as if the whole area was holding its breath. I tried to move quietly, not sure why. Maybe I didn't want to startle whoever had fallen asleep or passed out inside. Maybe I didn't want to startle myself. I drew closer, 10 feet, 5. I could see the wood grain clearly now, the edges of the footprints curling upward as they dried. No noise, no shifting of weight, no creak of hull. I called out, softly at first, then louder. "Hey, you okay in there?" Nothing, just the slight lap of water against fiberglass. My voice sounded too loud, like it didn't belong here. I reached out, hand hovering over the edge of the red canoe. I don't know why I hesitated. Some primal instinct. A chill ran up my spine, not from the cold, but from something older, deeper. My fingers touched the wood. It was dry now. The footprints had all but vanished, but the seat was damp. Only one, the front. I climbed in slowly, shifting my weight to the center. No sign of life. I scanned the horizon. Nothing but trees and rock and water. No camps visible, no other boats. It was too early for day paddlers, too late in the season for crowds. I sat there, straddling both vessels, trying to make sense of it. Then I noticed something else. There were scratches, faint ones, on the inside edge of the canoe near the front seat. Parallel lines, like fingernails dragging against wood. Not enough to gouge, just enough to mark. And below them, a small patch of darker stain, like something had pooled there, something that hadn't dried like the rest. I didn't stay long. After that, I pushed the red canoe toward shore, tied it to a stump, and marked the location on my map. I planned to radio the park office once I hit a ranger station, but when I returned 2 hours later, it was gone. Rope still there, knot still tied, but the canoe vanished. I asked around at the next portage. No one had seen it. A solo hiker said she heard something around dawn, like a splash followed by silence, but thought it was just a loon diving. I didn't push the conversation. That night I couldn't sleep. The lake outside my tent looked normal, still, but I kept thinking about those footprints, how they just stopped. I told myself it had to be someone messing around. Maybe a prank. Maybe I was overtired. I didn't believe it. Not really. It's been 6 weeks. I haven't been back. But I still think about that canoe. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see it again, cutting silently across the lake, moving with quiet intention, like it knows exactly where it's going. Like it's been there before. If anyone's paddled the boundary waters and seen something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 19. Buried Boots. I've hiked the Pisgah National Forest trails. For years, mostly alone. It's where I go when I need to think, or when I need to forget. Last weekend, I took a route I hadn't explored in over a decade. I remembered the ridge vaguely, steep descent, heavy with pine, always a bit damp from the morning fog that settles like a blanket. But what I found this time made it hard to believe I'd ever walked it before. About halfway down, where the slope levels briefly before a sharp drop, I felt something soft underfoot. Something that yielded slightly but didn't snap like twigs or crunch like pine needles. I stopped, shifted my weight back, and looked down. At first it just looked like a clump of dark soil, but then I saw the shape. I crouched and brushed the surface gently. The earth came away easily, loose and recently disturbed. Underneath, a boot toe peeked through. That alone wouldn't have rattled me. Maybe someone dropped old gear, maybe animals dragged something there. But as I unearthed more, I saw the second boot, neatly aligned beside the first. They were identical to mine. Same brand, Vasca Breeze. Same scuff marks on the toes. Same fraying on the laces where I always tie them a certain way, with the left loop longer than the right. Even the dirt patterns looked familiar. I pulled off my own boot to compare. The match was exact, down to the stitch. There was no body. No bones, no sign of decomposition, just the boots. But someone had clearly taken the time to bury them with care, as if they meant something. As I leaned in, I noticed something tucked between them, wrapped in clear plastic and sealed with tape, a folded note. My fingers hesitated before picking it up. The plastic crinkled faintly, oddly loud in the still woods. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a small piece of lined notebook paper, the ink slightly smudged from condensation. 3 words were scrawled in a hurried all-caps hand: "Go back." I didn't move for a long time. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds had gone silent, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. I felt exposed, like I'd stepped into the middle of something I wasn't supposed to see. I turned in a slow circle. Nothing but trees. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been standing there just moments before I arrived. I thought about the trail behind me. I hadn't passed anyone for over an hour. No camps, no voices. Cell signal had dropped miles ago. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a prank? Maybe someone else with the same boots? But the way they were buried, it felt ceremonial, deliberate. I picked up the boots, intending to take them back. But the moment I touched them, something shifted. Not the earth, me. It was like a cold hand pressing lightly against the base of my neck. Not painful, but heavy. The air thickened, the light dimmed, as if the sun had ducked behind a cloud that wasn't there. I dropped them and stumbled back. My own boots suddenly felt too tight, like they didn't belong on my feet. I looked down again and swore the buried pair had shifted slightly. The toes now angled toward me, just a fraction. Enough to notice, enough to make me sweat. I didn't run, but I walked fast, back up the ridge, heart thudding louder than my footfalls. I didn't stop until I reached the trailhead, where the wind finally picked up again and the sky returned to its usual gray. I told myself I'd imagined it all, but when I got home that night, I checked my boots. On the inside of the tongue, where I'd written my initials years ago with a fading Sharpie, I found a new mark, scratched in faintly beside them, barely visible unless you looked closely. 3 letters I didn't put there: GBK. I've since tried to find that ridge. Again, GPS logs the trail, but every time I follow it, I end up somewhere else. The slope is different, the pines thinner, and that patch of earth, gone, like the forest doesn't want me to return. But some nights, when I leave my boots by the door, they're not where I left them in the morning. Sometimes they're side by side, laces tied, facing the front door. Has anyone else seen something like this out there? Or is it just me losing my mind? If you've ever found something that felt like it was meant for you, but shouldn't have been there, please let me know. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 20. Birdsong cut off. I work as a field technician for an environmental research lab. Most of the time, that just means driving to remote places, placing audio recorders, and logging ambient sound for later analysis, bird population studies, ecosystem shifts, stuff like that. It's quiet work, and I like it that way, but I haven't been back to Lake Tahoe since last September. I don't think I ever will. I still have the audio file from that day. I haven't deleted it. I probably should. That morning started like any other. Early light filtering through smoke-blue pine trees, a thin mist over the water. I parked the van just off the forest road and hiked about a mile to the designated site, Zone 8C. I remember the quiet crunch of dry pine needles under my boots and the cold metal of the recorder in my hand. Birds were already calling when I set up the mic. Jays, sparrows, something higher pitched I didn't recognize. It felt normal, peaceful. I pressed record and backed away to give the mic space. I left it running for 35 minutes while I wandered the nearby perimeter. My phone had no signal as usual, but I checked the time compulsively. I remember thinking the light seemed still, like the air wasn't moving. No wind, no rustling leaves. Just birdsong and my own steps, slower than usual. I took a few notes and then went back, turned off the recorder and headed home. I didn't listen to the file until later that night. I always scrubbed through the recordings with headphones, tagging moments of interest. At first it was the usual stuff, fluttering wings, overlapping calls, the occasional distant crack of branches, but at 23 seconds in, every bird call stopped. Just cut off, like someone flicked a switch. The waveform dipped suddenly, and then, in that strange stillness, I heard something I couldn't explain. It was breathing, not mine. Dry, close to the mic, like someone had leaned in. Deliberate, heavy exhales through the nose. I paused the playback. My hands were cold. I rewound and listened again. The same break in birdsong, the same breaths. Then faint but unmistakable, a voice. Not a whisper, not a shout, just my name. Twice. Ben. Pause. Ben. I sat frozen for a few seconds, headphones still on, not breathing. I know my own name. I know my own voice. And this wasn't it. It sounded low, rough, like someone trying to sound casual, but not getting the rhythm quite right. I checked the metadata. The file had no edits, one continuous take. I was alone when I recorded it, or at least I thought I was. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some audio corruption, a radio bleed, but this recorder doesn't have that kind of reception. It's analog, pure mic input. I played the rest of the file. The birds never came back, just ambient silence, punctuated by occasional creaks, like shifting wood or footsteps far off. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I returned to Zone 8C. I shouldn't have. I told myself I just wanted to check the equipment, make sure everything was normal. But really, I needed to prove I'd imagined it. The woods looked the same, but the air felt wrong, still thick. I walked to the same tree, set the mic down again, and pressed record. Then I stood back and waited. 10 minutes passed. No birds, no wind. I kept scanning the tree line, heart hammering in my throat. I thought I heard something, like a low hum, just beyond human hearing. But maybe it was my ears. I packed up and left fast. I didn't listen to that second recording for days. When I finally did, it was blank. No audio, just static. As if something had wiped it clean, or had never let it record to begin with. That's when I stopped going out alone. I made excuses, transferred to data work. I told my supervisor I was having car trouble. That was months ago. I still have the original file. I've played it for a few people. Audio techs, a sound engineer friend. They all say the same thing. The break is unnatural, not an artifact, not a glitch. They don't mention the voice. Maybe they don't hear it, or maybe they're afraid to admit they do. Sometimes I play it again, late at night, with headphones on and the lights off. The birds always stop at 23 seconds. The breathing comes, then the voice. Always the same, always close. Sometimes I think I hear it whisper again, softer this time, like it's waiting for something, like it's learning how to say my name better. If anyone else has ever captured something like this, If you've heard your own name where it shouldn't be, please tell me. I need to know I'm not the only one.